والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ولا شبيه ولا مثيل له ولا ضد ولا ند ولا جسد ولا صورة ولا أعضاء له. كان الله ولا مكان فهو الآن على ما عليه كان. فلا تضربوا لله الأمثال ولله المثل الأعلى. تنزه ربي عن الجلوس والقعود وعن الحركة والسكون وعن شيء ولا ينحل منه شيء ولا يحل هو في شيء لأنه ليس كمثله شيء. مهما تصورت ببالك فالله لا يشبه ذلك. ومن وصف الله بمعنى من معاني البشر فقد كفر. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله ونبيه وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله. أرسله الله هدى ورحمة للعالمين هاديا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه سراجا وهاجا وقمرا منيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وأعظم وأنعم وأكرم على هذا النبي الكريم كلما ذكره الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكره الغافلون. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة يا سيدي يا عظيم الجاه. I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and to protect his Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe and nothing in the universe is like him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because he is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne, and he is not attributed with fatigue, like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. And whoever attributes an attribute of the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and his final prophet and messenger sent to all humans and jinn, and he is truthful about everything that he conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intentions for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deed that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise would be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So Alhamdulillah, We are grateful to Allah, we are thankful, and we are happy that Allah Ta'ala has guided us to Al-Islam because it is the greatest endowment. And we are grateful and happy that we have been guided to have access to the authentic knowledge of Ahlul Sunnah through the connected, validated, and confirmed chains of narration. Because the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnah is the key to paradise, and the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnah is the life of Al-Islam. So continuing on where we left off, we're talking about the sins of the tongue. We finished last class talking about making a mistake while reciting Quran, like changing one of the inflections of the words. So this is sinful. And also like adding certain letters to the recitation that are not part of the Quran, but some people they add extra letters because they think that it makes their recitation sound better. So this is also sinful to do. So now we're going to be mentioning the next one that is listed here among the sins of the tongue is for the person who has enough wealth or a craft, like a trade, to beg. So it is a sin of the tongue for the person who has enough money to satisfy their bare necessities, to cover their necessities. It's sinful for that person to ask others for money, which essentially is called begging. So that can take the form of someone standing in the street and having like a container and then like having a sign telling people to give them money or asking for things like that while people are walking by. So this is included in that. So if the person that is doing that, in reality, they have enough money to satisfy their bare necessities, then it would be forbidden for them to do that, to beg for money, to ask people for money. And the second situation is when a person, they, let's say, don't have money, but they have a way to make money through a trade or a craft, for example, like being a carpenter. So they know how to work as a carpenter. So they have to use that skill that they have to generate money. Or if they're like a blacksmith, they know how to work with metal. So they have to use that skill to get money instead of asking people for it. So that is among the sins of the tongue because the person, he asks the people for the money with obviously his tongue. So among the sins of the tongue that is an enormous sin is for the person that has enough money or the person that has a trade to ask people for money, to beg. So if this person, he has in his possession what is sufficient for his basic necessities, or he's able to get those basic necessities through working in something halal, then it's an enormous sin for the person to beg for money. And this is because of the hadith narrated by Abu Dawood and al-Bayhaqi, لا تحل المسألة لغني ولا لذي مرة سوي. Which means it is not permissible to beg for the person who has their bare necessities or the person who is able to generate revenue with their skill or their physical effort. They are physically capable of making money without begging, so it would be forbidden for them to beg. And the term al-mirra in the hadith is referring to the one who is strong. And the term mirra linguistically means strong, and it's referring to a person who is able to make money without begging. And the sawi in the hadith, as it says, وَلَا لِذِي مِرَّةٍ sawi. So mirra is referring to the physical capability. Sawi is referring to someone who, let's say they have um, a complete, like let's say physical body. Because someone, for example, might have some sort of disability, physical disability, so they would be excluded from this. Narrated by Al-Bukhari, and Al-Bukhari and Muslim narrated from the hadith of Abdullah, son of Umar, radiallahu anhuma. Abdullah is the son of Umar al-Khattab, and he uh, was named by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as being a righteous man. So he is an exemplary Muslim. He is a Muslim that is a role model. And so he narrates, and he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لا يزال الرجل يسأل الناس حتى يأتي يوم القيامة وليس في وجهه مزعة لحم. And so this hadith means that the person, the man won't continue or will continue to beg people for money until he comes on Judgment Day and there is no flesh on his face. And so his face would be completely fleshless, with no flesh. The Prophet ﷺ is saying the one who begs without a need, um, because it is dispraised, this would be a sin. Yani the person who does that without a need would be sinful. What the Prophet ﷺ is referring to is just a case of when the person doesn't need to beg. The person has what he needs. He has enough. And despite that, he's still begging. This is the one that on Judgment Day, he'll come with no flesh on his face. And so, because this is dispraised, to beg people for money while being able and while having money. As for the one who begs because of a need, then he is not dispraised. Because the Prophet ﷺ has said, لِلسَّائِلِ حَقٌّ وَلَوْ جَاءَ عَلَى فَرَسٍ. This means, and he has a sort of right, even if he comes riding on a horse. Because that person, he might have a horse while being poor. He doesn't have what satisfies his bare necessities. So say just because someone, let's say, has a horse, doesn't necessitate that they would have the other necessities that they need. And so even if the person that's, let's say, asking or begging, they come on a horse, it's still, if their situation is that they don't have anything else to satisfy their needs with, then he qualifies, or he would be someone who is begging with a need. And Imam Muslim, he narrated from the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that he said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, من يسأل الناس أموالهم تكثرا فإنما يسأل جمرا فليستقل أو ليستكثر. So this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling the judgment about the one who asks the people or begs for money while having what he needs, that this is something that leads to hellfire. فَإِنَّ يَسْأَلُ جَمْرًا, meaning, yeah, literally it says that in reality he's begging for a burning ember, and a burning, so something like a burning hot coal, and referring to the torture in hellfire. It is understood from this also that it is not permissible for the woman who has her needs satisfied by the financial support of her husband to ask her husband to buy her expensive things like golden bracelets and the like, except if the husband told her, ask me whatever you want, or um and if you want anything, if you want to buy anything or get anything, then tell me about it, and I'll get it for you. For example, like the husband already let her know, if you anything that you want to buy, anything that you want to get, I'll get it for you. Just tell me what it is. That's in this case, it's not sinful. In this case, then she's able to say, buy me this bracelet, buy me this ring, buy me this, because he told her already that he wants to buy her whatever she wants. As for the light things, yani things that are not expensive, that are like the norm amongst the pious women, then this is permissible for her to ask. Like if she requests from him to buy her something sweet, to buy her something like sweets. Uh, um, and the ideal and the best is, if she wanted to ask him for something, for her to say, um, can you bring such and such? Like, can you, like asking it that way, like, can you bring us such and such? Or um, is it okay if you bring us such and such? Like to ask in that way instead of saying to him, bring us such and such. So, mashallah, we see here in the Islamic law, even to that point of precision, the scholars of the Islamic law, they made that distinction, that if even in the case where she's going to ask for something that she's allowed to ask for, the way that she asks is taken into consideration. And it's more virtuous and better for her, like as a Muslim, to ask in that way, to request in that way. Uh, can you bring us this and this? Or would you bring us this and this? Or is it okay if you bring us this and this? Or um, if you please bring us this and this, as opposed to saying, bring this. Likewise, it's permissible for her to ask him to take her to a restaurant to eat. That's something also the scholar specifically mentioned. So she's allowed to, it's permissible for her, and it would not be considered begging if she told him, can you take me to this restaurant to eat, or let's go out to eat at this place. And also, it's permissible for her to ask him for money to go to Hajj. So it would not be considered begging if the wife asked the husband, uh, I have money to go to Hajj, or will you give me money to go to Hajj, or can you pay for me to go to Hajj? This would not be considered begging, because that money, she asked for it to perform an act of obedience, and not for luxury, or not to live luxuriously. and she didn't ask for that money so that she can have something luxurious of the dunya. She asked for it so she can go. If what takes place amongst friends normally, that a friend would ask another friend for something small, then it wouldn't be considered forbidden begging. Like if he tells his friend after he returns from the Hajj, uh, bring us sea wax as a gift or Zamzam water as a gift or the like, among what is any the norm, what's considered the normal practice in the Islamic tradition and in the Islamic manners. Like for a Muslim to ask another Muslim, bring me back a sea wax from Mecca. This is something that is known or something that is the norm amongst Muslim friends. So it wouldn't be considered begging, like, because it's something small. Um, so it's the issue of the forbidden begging. It doesn't only the only scenario is not only when someone is like begging on the street with a sign and they have like a container with coins in it or with money in it, so people throw money in it or put money in it. That's not the only situation where it's haram begging. It could be someone that is not homeless and they're not begging on the street, but they just, let's say, tell someone, for example, can you give me, let's say, $1,000 as a gift? Can you give me, uh, can you buy me a car? Can you, buy me um, an expensive watch, or can you buy me an iPhone? So if the person has their bare necessities and um, they have they satisfy their bare necessities, yeah, they're not in a situation where they are in need, then it'll be forbidden for them to ask somebody for that. And unless that person tells them any beforehand, anything that you want or anything that you need, tell me and I'll buy it for you, or tell me and I'll give it to you. That's different. Everything clear on that before moving on to the next one? All right, the next one is to make a vow with the intent of depriving an heir. So the heir, this is an English word that's referring to the one who inherits from the deceased. So as you know, like if someone has like a Muslim relative, like let's say a parent or a sibling, and that Muslim parent or that Muslim sibling or say like the Muslim uncle or the Muslim aunt, they die, then depending on who you are to them, meaning like your blood ties relationship to them, like are you their son, are you their parent, are you their grandparent, are you their cousin, are you their aunt, are you their uncle? There's a certain process that determines the amount of money or the amount of the inheritance that inheritor will get. So we have, and in the Islamic law, this has been detailed and explicitly outlined, and it's explicitly mentioned in the Quran. So we just have to plug in the numbers. See, for example, let's say um, somebody's mom died, their Muslim mom died. How many kids does she have? Let's say that there was only child. Okay, only one child. Did she leave behind a husband? Did she leave behind a parent? Or her parents still alive, etc.? So it's checked who's left alive that's connected to her through the blood ties and through, they say, like the womb connection. Um, like who's directly related to her. And so based on that, and depending on the number of them that is left, that she left behind, then the calculation is made and then split based on a certain quantity, but depending on if they're males or if they're females, etc., the amount would be split so that if they can, let's say, agree and accept amongst themselves, like you get this and I get this and etc. If they say, oh, no, I want this, and the other one says, no, I want that, and they can't agree, then the inheritance is split in that way that is defined in the religion. So, and that is to prevent injustice and to prevent, you know, uh, people's rights from being violated. But if they can all agree on something, they all say, I'll take this, I'll take that, we'll split it like this, split it like that. They can do that. But if any of them says, no, I want my right, I demand exactly what the religion allows me, then they would have to do that calculation. And it's very easy to do. And this knowledge of inheritance is a very important, a very and a rewardable knowledge. It is it is a communal obligation to know this knowledge, and it does require some ability to do math with fractions. So if you're good at doing math with fractions, it would excel in this branch of Islamic knowledge. So that's the background. So if let's say let's say they're sick, right? They have like what they call a terminal illness. They have cancer. May Allah protect us, ameen. And that person that has cancer, they have children, or they have any people that would inherit from them after they die. So that person that is sick with a terminal illness, they cannot. It is forbidden for them to make a vow, something called a nadhr in Arabic, which is a certain specific thing that the individual, the Muslim, he would make an obligation upon himself that's not already an obligation. So an example of a nadhr, for example, is like making it an obligation upon yourself to fast every Monday and Thursday, right? Because it's sunnah to fast every Monday and Thursday. But if a Muslim he wants to make it an obligation upon himself, there's a certain phrasing, certain words that he says out loud, so that that thing becomes an obligation. This is called a nadhr, a vow. And so the Muslim is obligated to fulfill the vow, and it's done in a specific way. It's not just saying, I want to do this or I will do this, or it has to be said in a specific way where the Muslim makes it an obligation upon himself. So and that's with any recommended matter, any rewardable recommended matter. So if a Muslim, they say, I make a vow, or any they do the religious process for the vow, that they will give, that they're going to give half their money, right, donate it to the masjid, for example. And the reason they're doing it, their intention behind it, is so that when they die, that person who they don't want to inherit from them won't get anything. Because if he, let's say, donates half of his money to the masjid, then the money that that inheritor would potentially have gotten would be like, a certain amount of money. But because he doesn't want him to get anything, he supposedly makes a vow so that that person that's supposed to inherit doesn't get anything. and this is an enormous sin. So among the sins of the tongue, which are an enormous sin, is for the person, the Muslim, to make a vow with the intention to deprive the heir. And if a person does that, if a person did like say the words of the vow would not take place. It would not be valid. So that vow, so he would be sinful, right? He gets a sin for even saying it. Second, the vow doesn't take place. So they don't have to, they're not obligated to fulfill that vow because it wasn't valid it was invalid. It wasn't valid to begin with. So an example of that type of invalid vow is for the person to say, I vow or nadartu, like which means I do the process of the vow and make it incumbent upon myself to give all of my money to the poor or to the masjid or the like, and with the intention of depriving the inheritor, the one who's supposed to inherit. Likewise, it is forbidden for him to gift all of his money with the intention of depriving the heir. And this is also among the enormous sins. So gifting and is different than giving a vow in the sense that the vow includes like saying a certain statement that it's a process to enact the religious vow. But in the case of the gift, it's just literally just giving it. So if the person who has the money before they die, let's say they give all their money to a random poor person with the intention to deprive the heir, and with the intention that they're doing that so that their inheritors won't get any of the inheritance, then this is forbidden. It's also an enormous sin. However, if he knew, right, the father, let's say, he knew that his son is a wicked, enormous sinner that squanders the money and that he wastes the money, if he leaves it to him after death, then he'll waste the money in forbidden matters and he'll commit enormous sins with it. And so the father says, from now, I make it incumbent upon myself. I vow my money to the poor or to the masjid or to a specific person other than him. And so he made that vow in order to avoid that money reaching that enormous sinner's son after his death. In this case, it is not sinful. So let's say there was a father, had a Muslim father, and he was a multi-millionaire, and he had companies, and he had properties, and he had a lot of, let's say, liquid assets, etc. And he was a good Muslim, and he tried to raise his children right, etc. Or and he himself, he abides by the rules of the religion, like, even if early on he made mistakes, but then he changed. But so he has a son now that is, let's say, a grown adult, but they don't pray and they drink alcohol and they do drugs and they do enormous sins. And that father, uh, is he has the strong assumption that after he dies, and if his son gets his money, gets his inheritance, he's going to use it to do something sinful. He's going to use the money, let's say, to, open a bar or to like start some sort of haram business, right? So he knows that after his son gets the inheritance, he's going to use it for something haram. And so the father, to anticipate that or to get in front of that, he makes a vow so that he vows his money to the poor or to the masjid or to another person so that he avoids his son getting that money so that his son doesn't use it in sinful things, this is permissible. Any questions about that before moving on to the next? So the next is to neglect notifying another of a debt or a deposited object for safekeeping which no one knows about apart from them. So as you know, if let's say uh, a Muslim borrows money from another Muslim, and the only people who knew about it are the parties involved. So the one who's borrowing the money and the one who's lending the money, they're the only ones who know about it, yani among the people. So the one who borrowed it, if let's say he is has the death sickness or like he's and he feels like he might die soon, and also he feels like if he doesn't like document or record or tell someone about this loan, that the person who gave him the loan, if they come and try to collect it after they're dead, the inheritors, they might be skeptical and they might refuse to believe the claim that he owed the money. And so that person who let him borrow the money might not get his money back. So because of that, it is sinful to leave out any writing a will for either a loan or a physical object that was given to the person to keep safe. It's sinful to not at least tell someone or make a will and explain it in the will. So and so, let me borrow such and such. If I die, then he has to be paid. So and so gave me such and such physical object to keep it safe until they return. And so if I die before they return, this object belongs to them. It has to be returned to them. So it's an obligation upon the one who he has a debt or is keeping an object for safekeeping. It's an obligation upon him to inform someone other than an inheritor that his that the claim or the verification of the loan or the object for safekeeping would be confirmed through him. And he's someone who their word is believed. And he's someone who, if let's say after the death of that person, then this person comes up and says, yes, he did owe such and such money. Yes, he did that physical object. He was keeping it safe for so and so. It needs to be taken back. And for that person to be believed, there has to be someone that if they say that, it would be believed. He would be believed. He wouldn't be someone that the inheritors, for example, are suspicious of. Someone that has the apparent trustworthiness. So if that person fears that that right would be lost unless they put it in the will or they tell someone other than an inheritor that is trustworthy, and he fails to do that, then he's sinful. Now, if other people knew about the loan or about the physical object for safekeeping, then he doesn't have to write it in his will, but it's recommended. So let's say, for example, someone borrows money from someone else, but other people knew about the loan. So, for example, like a man would be discussing with his wife about a situation. So he basically they're going back and forth, and he explains he needs to borrow money from so and so, for example. So then he goes, he borrows the money, he comes back with it. So then she knows, okay, he got the loan from so and so. And then and also the one who lent the money, he would, for example, have discussed it with someone and told them, I'm going to loan this person money, etc. So other people know. It's not just the two parties involved. In that case, he's not obligated to document that in the will or to inform, like, another person because there's other people that already know. But it's recommended for them to include it in the will. And when we say a loan, or we should say debt, this includes like unpaid zakah, and it includes any debt owed to another human. Any questions about that before moving on? So the next one is to falsely claim to be the offspring of someone other than one's father, or claim to be liberated by other than one's former owner. So this one is pretty straightforward. So someone, like let's say a person, they cannot claim that someone other than their biological father is their father. So they can't say, oh, let's say this other person raised me and took care of me, and so I'm gonna say he's my dad. I'm gonna say he's my father, meaning like I'm gonna take his lineage and I'm gonna say that I'm from his lineage, but in reality he isn't. This is forbidden because there are certain rights that would be lost. And likewise, the case of the slave. When the slave is freed, the one who frees the slave, in certain situations, he would be that slave's guardian, for example. So, and in other situations, the emancipator would play a certain role religiously for that ex-slave. So let's say that he owned a slave, he freed him, then that slave, for example, had possessions, had money, and then they died. But that slave, let's say, didn't have any family. The parents were dead. They had no siblings, no uncles and aunts, no children. So that um, ex-slave that died, that was a Muslim. Now, who gets the inheritance? If there's no one from his family left, then the emancipator would get the inheritance, for example. So this is one of those examples. So you cannot say, for example, that someone else is your father when in reality they're not, like taking their lineage and stuff like that. And the same thing for the slave that was freed. He can't say, so and so freed me, and it wasn't him. But if you as a Muslim, let's say, you knew of like, let's say, a child, a Muslim child that was abandoned or that their parents were killed and they had nobody else to take care of them, and then you just take care of them. You bring them into your home, you do what they need, you raise them like your own child. This is okay. This is permissible. This is very rewardable. But what you cannot do is say, that's my daughter, that's my son. What you cannot do is say, their lineage goes through me. So this is what is forbidden. Other than that, it's permissible to do. The next one is to propose to a woman after the proposal of another Muslim brother to her is accepted. So among the sins of the tongue is to propose to a woman that was already proposed to and the proposal was accepted, which is this is officially known as an engagement. So let's say there was a Muslim woman and then a Muslim suitor came and asked for her hand in marriage. Let's say asked the father for the hand in marriage, and the father agreed. And the father said, "Yeah, yes, I accept you as a fiance." And now they're in the engagement phase. So in this case, while the engagement is on, it's forbidden for a second guy to come and ask for her hand in marriage. This is forbidden. And this is forbidden when the response or the acceptance is given by someone like a guardian that can and accept without her consent, or an acceptance from her or from her and the guardian. So once that acceptance happens, now it's official engagement. So now the second guy is forbidden from proposing to her without the permission of the first guy. However, if he gets the permission of the first guy, if he goes to the first guy and says, "Hey, I want to shoot my shot," also, the first guy says, "Yeah, go ahead." In this case, it's permissible for him to propose during the engagement phase. Likewise, it's permissible for the second one to come and propose if the engagement gets called off. So the first one, he proposed and it was accepted. So now they're engaged. But then, let's say a couple of days later, the fiance, he says, "You know what, we're not compatible. We don't have chemistry. Let's just call it off." And then he walks away. Basically, he walks away from it, from the engagement. So now the second one, now he's allowed to propose, whether the first one gives his permission or not. And this is forbidden because of the harm and the bad blood that it would cause. And for example, that the second guy, if he comes and he proposes while the engagement is still on, that first guy, he's gonna get offended. He's gonna feel like, oh, this person, he is, doing this when he knows the engagement is on, and it might lead to them never talking to each other again, for example, or it might lead to them just becoming enemies. So this is the reason why it's forbidden. And so this is why in the case where if the first one, if he walks away, then it's fair game. So the second one he can propose, and even if the other one gets offended and says, how could you propose after me or something like that, that's doesn't doesn't affect anything. It's not sinful. The next one is among the sins of the tongue is to give an Islamic judgment without knowledge. So among the sins of the tongue, which is an enormous sin, is for the person to give a religious judgment without knowledge. Allah Ta'ala revealed in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Which means do not speak without knowledge. And the ayah means do not speak without knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, all of those we are responsible for, or all of those he will be questioned about. The human will be questioned about them on Judgment Day. So what you hear and what you see and what you think with your heart, all of that we will be judged for it on Judgment Day. So the first part of the ayah, وَلَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ, it means do not speak without knowledge. And this is something that nowadays is become widespread. And specifically about the Islamic knowledge, has become widespread that many people and they're not like teachers or sheikhs or imams, they don't even claim to be, but they're just like, your regular everyday Muslim, but they give judgments in Islam without knowledge. They'll say about this that is halal, they'll say about that is haram, they'll say about such and such other thing that is dispraised, such and such other thing that it's bad. And when in reality, they're just speaking their own opinion. This is haram. It's an enormous sin. And even some people who are perceived as teachers and imams and scholars, they also speak without knowledge. So it's also sinful. So speaking without knowledge, sometimes the reason that a person does it is because they don't want to say, I don't know. Like if someone asks them a question, what's the judgment of this? Or what's the meaning of such and such hadith? Or what's the meaning of such and such ayah? And that person, they don't want to say, I don't know, because they don't want to lose face or because they don't want to be perceived as ignorant or perceived as less knowledgeable than, let's say, another person. And so instead of saying, I don't know, they give an answer without knowledge. And this is haram. It's an enormous sin. It has been confirmed that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was asked about some things. He was asked about some matters. And he said in response to that question, I don't know. And then he asked Jibreel, and Jibreel said, I don't know. And Jibreel said, I don't know. I will ask my Lord. So Jibreel made dua to Allah, asking him, and Allah Ta'ala taught Jibreel the answer. Yani Allah revealed to Jibreel the answer. And so Jibreel came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he revealed to him what Allah said, what Allah revealed, or what Allah judged, the information that he was asking about. And so this is a great evidence, a great proof, because that hadith is confirmed that there was a companion who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what are the best places and what are the worst places on earth? And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, لا أدري أسأل جبريل. So he said, I don't know. I will ask Jibreel. So he asked Jibreel. Jibreel said, لا أدري أسأل ربي. He said, I don't know. I will ask my Lord. Yani that he'll make supplication to receive the answer. So Jibril, once he got the answer, he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, بلاد المساجد وفي لفظ خير البقاع المساجد وشر البقاع الأسواق. This is narrated by Muslim and Ibn Hibban. So the answer was Jibril told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the best places on earth are the masjids, and that among the worst places on earth are the marketplaces. Of course, the marketplaces are not the absolute worst places on earth because obviously churches and synagogues and Hindu temples and anywhere that was built to worship a creation, like the people who worship the devil, the people who worship the sun, moon, and the stars. Any place that was built to for blasphemy, obviously those are the worst places. But among the worst places are the marketplaces. And one of the reasons for that is because there's a lot of scamming and swindling and cheating and cursing and insulting that happens in the marketplaces. Also, there is a narration about the jinn that supposedly they lay their eggs in the marketplace. So, based on that narration, some scholars said that the jinn they lay eggs. But anyway, the point is the marketplace is among the worst places. But the point of that hadith of mentioning it is showing clearly that even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "I don't know." So there's no shame and no defect in saying, "I don't know" when you don't know. It is not a virtue to speak without knowledge. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man afta bighayri ilm, لعنته ملائكة السماء والأرض." Subhanallah. It means whoever gives a judgment without knowledge, the angels of the heaven and the earth damn him. This is narrated by Ahmad. No, this is narrated by Ibn Asakir. The Hafiz Ibn Asakir narrated that. Al-Imam Ahmad narrated from Shafi'i, from Malik, from Muhammad ibn Ajlan, radiallahu anhum, that he said, if the scholar does not say, I don't know, then he has been hit in the fatal spots. Yani, the scholar who speaks without knowledge, or the one who, instead of saying, I don't know, when they don't know, they say something else. This one is, and he says something else without knowledge, then this one is destroying himself. The wording that is used, yani that his spots have been hit. There's certain spots on the body that if they get hit, then most likely that person is going to die in a short period of time. Like if someone got one of their arteries cut, either on their wrist or on their neck, their jugular vein, or the artery that's on their thigh, if like they get sliced or something hits it and they start bleeding from there, they'll most likely be dead in 2 minutes. And even if like they're right next to the ambulance, right next to the hospital, they still might not make it. But for sure, That's probably the only one of the only chances to be able to make it is if you're close to like a medical team, because they're gonna have to try and stop the bleeding and slow it down, and they're gonna have to give you blood because it happens fast. The way that the blood comes out of those arteries, it's like pouring out, it's like squirting out, and the person they'll bleed out, and it's hard to stop the wound from bleeding. It's hard. It's difficult. May Allah protect us. I mean, so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also, like for example, if a person gets hit in the back of the head, that it could be fatal. If they get hit hard enough in the back of the head, they'll die. So certain places on the body, if you get hit there, you'll most likely die. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying the one who, if the scholar, if he doesn't say I don't know when he's supposed to, then he'll be destroyed. Yani he'll perish because of his sins. Yani meaning he'll commit sins and he'll be deserving of the torture. And some companions they said, أجرأكم على الفتوى أجرأكم على النار. And the one among you who is the most audacious with speaking without knowledge, then he is someone who will be like rushing to go to hell. Like someone who is being audacious towards going to hell, like they're on the way there. And Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he said, العلم ثلاثة كتاب ناطق وسنة محكمة وسنة محكمة ولا أدري. So this righteous Muslim, Abdullah, the son of Umar al-Khattab, he said, the knowledge is of three categories. It's the Quran, the confirmed hadith, and I don't know. Meaning, it's very straightforward dealing with Islamic information. Meaning, if you know it, meaning if you learned it and you have this information passed on to you, then you speak it, and that's it, and you know the answer. Is such and such thing halal? Then if you learned it and you had this information passed on to you through the connected chain, the trustworthy chain, then you can say that it's halal. And if you did not, then you say, I don't know. So either you're, let's say, giving the answer based off the Quran, and from the Quran, meaning that you learned it, etc., it's confirmed to you, or the Hadith, and meaning it's you learned it, is confirmed to you, or you didn't. You don't know what the religion judged, or you don't know what the Quran revealed about it, what the Quran says about it. You don't know. You just have your own perspective, your own opinion, your own feeling. Then in that case, you just say, I don't know. Because the way that we judge and the way that we, uh, the answer to these questions, is it halal, is it haram, is it recommended, is it disliked, is it praised, or is it dispraised? And it comes down to the Islamic law. So if we know what the Islamic law says, we say it. If we don't know what it says, we say, I don't know. So whoever gives a religious judgment without knowledge, even if they were a mujtahid, he gives an answer. So I'm sorry. So the one who gives a religious judgment, the one who says about something halal, that is halal, or somebody says about something that is haram, this person is either a mujtahid, that meaning like a Shafi'i. So if he was like that, he gives the answer based on his ijtihad, based on his deduction. And if he was not a mujtahid, then he has no other recourse. He has no other option except relying on the judgment of any mujtahid, of any imam that's a mujtahid, that it's known yani, that he said that judgment, or that mujtahid he had like direct students that they um, were well rooted in the knowledge and they also deduced that judgment from a text or from something that that imam wrote or said. And it is permissible to transmit the an answer inside of a madhab, a school of Islamic law, uh, with other than the school of Islamic law that both the asker and the asked follow. So let's say someone asks me a question and I follow a Shafi'i, and that person who asked me the question, they follow a Shafi'i. And they ask me the question and I give them the answer based on the school of Al-Imam Abu Hanifa. This is permissible. I could tell them, for example, according to Abu Hanifa, this is the judgment. Even though me and the one who asked me, we follow a Shafi'i. So if the person he is transmitting that judgment from a book, then it is a condition that that book be authenticated. If this did not happen, and he says to the one who's asking him, I found so and so, or I read in such and such book, such and such, without confirming any, without saying like this is the judgment, or without being sure that that book has been attributed to the author. So whoever's asked and he didn't have knowledge about the judgment, he should not avoid saying, I don't know. He should say. So basically, the case here is when someone is giving a religious judgment, either they got that themselves because they're mujtahid and they got that judgment themselves, or they're following a mujtahid, or they're reading from a book that has been validated and authenticated, meaning the person who or the person who's reading from the book, they know it is confirmed and that everything in it is correct, or that what they took in it is correct, or uh, they did not, let's say, read that book on anyone, but it's written there in the book, but they're not sure that this book has been attributed to the author. And he has to let the person who's asking him know, look, I saw in such and such book, and I'm not sure if this book is confirmed that the author wrote it, but he just tells him that he found that in that book, not saying that that's the judgment. He's just saying this is what I read in that book or I found in that book. But in any case, the person who was asked the question and he does not know the answer, he should say, I don't know. She should practice it and make it a habit so that it's easy for him. Because it's been mentioned about Imam Malik, radiallahu anhu, that he was asked 48 questions. He answered 16 of them. And he said about the rest of them, I don't know. And Imam Ali is narrated about him that he said, my chest feels at ease when I ask something that I don't know about and I say I don't know. So if that's with the knowledgeable people such as Imam Malik and Imam Ali, then how about for someone like us? So the seeker of knowledge, he should get himself accustomed to saying I don't and to adhere to only transmitting what he has verified. Otherwise, he will perish and he will make others perish. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Next week we'll talk about learning and teaching harmful knowledge. That's among the sins of the tongue, and we'll go into detail giving some examples. Are there any questions? Okay, as somebody was saying about the jinn, yes, there's a narration that the jinn lay their eggs in the marketplaces. So based on that, some scholars said that jinns lay eggs, but it's not like a strong narration. Any other questions? طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيكم السلام عليكم